Okay, so in this lesson, we will work on the update portion of CRUD. So let's get started. Okay, so let's go to our schools.go file. Okay, and previously we implemented get, so now we want to implement update. So update expects a record, a school, and keep in mind that this record will be the actual record that the client has provided with the updates. Okay, so school has been updated. Okay, so let's create a query using the newly updated school data. Okay, and so we're going to simply say query. Again, nothing new here except maybe for the SQL. And so we're going to simply say update the name of the table, which we know is schools. So update schools and set name to be $1, level to be $2, contact to be $3, phone to be $4, right? So phone $4, email to be $5, website to be $6, and we have address to be $7. Let's put this down here. Okay, so we have address, we have the mode, which will be $8, and we have version, but version will just be the previous version incremented by 1. Okay, so these are the updates. These are the fields we want to update in our Postgres row. Now, which row? Well, it's going to be where ID is $9. Okay, and what we want is the actual version. Okay, so we want to use the version, so we'll say returning version, right? So that updated version is what we want back. Okay, and that is our query. So let's use this query. So I'm going to collect everything into an args variable, right? Slice. It could be of any type, so we're going to use the empty interface to signify that. And we're going to list out all the fields. So school that name, okay, it's going to be $1, right? So school that level for $2, schools that contact for $3, right? Let's finish the rest. School that phone, school that email, school that website, school that address. Alright, that's number 7. And then we have school.mode. However, we'll need to wrap this around with pq.array, because remember, we can't just use it directly. Right? Okay, great. So pq.array will ensure that our school.mode, which is currently Go, this is Go, right? It's a Go data, a string, a slice. We will be writing this to the database to update, so we need to make sure we convert it to the array type that PostgreSQL understands. Again, I've discussed this in the previous lesson. And finally, ID. So we're going to say school.id for $9. Okay, and so that's all we need, right? And so once we have that, let's just execute the query. But instead of executing it, let's just do it in one step by saying return m.db, right? That query row, right? And then I'm going to pass in the query as usual, and then I'm going to pass in args, and of course Go will put the 3 dots, which means it will expand all of these fields into the appropriate numbers. Okay. Now, query row returns a row. So I'm going to take that row and then I'm going to use the dot scan. Okay. And so that scan, of course, will return an error. Okay. And so I'm going to simply store whatever is returned in school.version, right? And notice I'm using the ampersand school.version. Okay, so I'm going to return this. So what will this do? It will execute the query with the arguments, and then whatever row is returned, it will use that along with the scan to grab the version. And if there are any errors, then that error will be returned. Otherwise, we will return nil, which is exactly what our update method does, right? So it expects an error. So after executing the query and using scan, it will either return a real error or it will return nil. Okay, so that's it. So very simple for update. Okay, so that takes care of the first part. When it comes to dealing with update, we now need to move to the handler. Alright, so let's close this. Let's go to API schools.go and let's create our update handler. Alright, so let's come down here. Alright, and so we're gonna create a new method. Right, of course, it's a method on application, and we're gonna call it update school handler. Right, so of course we know we need a response writer, and we need a request. Okay, we got that. So let's see how we'll structure this code. So what we want to do is to get the ID of the school that we want to update. All right, and so we'll be doing this method, okay, does a complete replacement, okay, in terms of updating. So what this simply means is that for now, the user will have to provide data for all the fields. Okay, so even though the client might only want to update the name, they will still have to provide all the other fields, such as level, contact, and so on. Okay, so that's why I say it's a complete replacement. Later on, we're going to talk about how to do partial updates, whereby you only provide the thing or the field that you want updated. Right? But for now, we're beginning, so we're going to have a complete replacement. Okay, so all I have to do is to get the ID, right, for the school that needs updating. Now, we already know how to do that, so I'm just gonna grab the code from here, and I'm gonna use that. Makes no sense to retype, especially given that we're on video, right? So we have our ID. We've checked for errors. If there are no errors, then what I want to do now, and this is the important part, I want to go and fetch, right, the original record from the database. Okay, so I'm fetching the original unaltered row from the database. And so I'm going to say school, okay, error, and we're going to say app.models.school.get. Okay, we're going to pass in the ID, and of course, if there are any errors, again, I don't want to retype all of this, so I'm just going to come up here to where we did our creating, right? And I will let's see if I need to retype all of this. I hope not. Yeah, right here. Right, so right here, I'm going to grab this. Right, I don't want to retype that. So let's come down here. Okay. So once we have the school record and we have checked for errors and there are no errors, then the next thing we want to actually do is to copy the changes the client have sent us into the original school record, right? So the school record is where we will make the changes. So before we can make the changes to the school record, we need to actually read in the client data, the changes by the client. Okay, so I'm gonna create an input struct, right, to hold data read in from the client. Again, this should not be anything new to you because we had to do the exact same thing when we were creating a new school. So I'm just going to take all of this, okay, and I'm going to take reading in the JSON as well. I'm going to copy that, right? So I don't want to retype the same thing. Okay, so we have the input, right? We have the input. Let me remove this for now. Okay, so we have the input, okay? And so what we will do next, and by the way, notice that we have the struct tags, right, as before. Okay, so what I want to do now is to do the reading. Okay, so let me paste that back, right? And so we're gonna read, right? I'm just gonna use an equal sign here, right? Because we have previously used a previously created error up here. All right, great. So we have written, right, the data from the client, and so the important step is right here. What I'm going to do, I am going to copy, okay, her. I am going to update, right, the fields, okay, or values in the school variable using the fields in the input struct. Okay, because remember, the input struct contains the changes that the client has sent us, and the school variable contains the original row that we got from the database. And so now we want to make those changes. So we're going to simply say, again, we're going to do all of it. So we're going to say school.name will be input.name. Okay. And then we're going to say make up school that level will be input that level, right? We're going to move on to the next one. School that contact will be input that contact. Again, this is a complete replacement, and that's the reason why we have to update every single field in school, right? So yes, it is a hassle, but for now, this is a reasonable approach. Later on, I'll show you how we can do the other way, where we only update the one that the user has specified, or the partial update. So school that phone is input that phone, school that email is input that email, and we have school that website is input that website. We're almost there. School that address is input that address, and we have school that mode will be input that mode. Okay, all right, so we have done the copying. So input that mode, of course, is a slice, and school that mode. Okay, where is school at mode? Yeah, here, school at mode. Okay, a slice. Okay, so it's a slice. It's a slice. So it's copying one slice to another. Okay, and that's the reason why you don't see me using PQ that array. Right? Okay, great. So we have that part completed. Right? And so what we're going to do next is to simply validate this new data that we have that we are now using. So school has been altered, okay, but the way it has been altered, is it still valid? So let's just perform before we can update or send this new data to the database. Let's perform some validation. So we're going to perform validation on the updated school. Right? So if validation fails, then we send, of course, a 422 unprocessable response. It's unprocessable entity response to the client. All right, so again, we already have the code to do that. So I don't think we should retype the whole thing. So I'm just going to go back up here where we did that previously. All right, and notice we did validation. All right, so let's come back down. And so let's use that code. All right. So if the validation checks out and everything works, then we will proceed to call the update method to actually do the update for us. All right. So let's pass the updated school record to the update method. Right, and that's easy enough. And we're going to use an assignment sign, an equal sign, right? Because we have already defined ERR variable previously. So updates. Okay, and what do we pass in? We pass in school. Then of course we need to check for any error, and so we're going to simply say if error not nil, then we know that we will have an app that server error message response. So WR error. Okay, and of course we need to return. Okay, so if there are no server errors and the update was successful, then we can proceed to write the response. Okay, and again, I don't want to have to do all of that, so I'll just grab this. Okay. Right, so notice a lot of the code is reusable, and so I will just put that there. So all we're going to do is to call the write.json method, send it status OK, send it the school. We don't have any headers, right? So nil. And of course, if there are any errors, then we have a server error. All right, so that's it for the second step. We have now created a update school handler method. And so what we want to do next is to actually register this new route, right? So the update route. So let's go ahead and do that. And we know we will need to go to the routes. Right. Let's close this. Let's go to the routes file. And let's register our routes. So let me just copy this. Oops, Control C. Let me copy this. And let me paste it. Okay. Now, when we are doing an update, in this case a complete replacement, we will use a method put. Okay, method put. Right, there is a patch, but that's for the partial updates, which we will look at later. But when we want to replace everything, that's what we use the put method. Okay, so the put is for complete replacement. Everything has to be provided. Patch, that's partial. Only what is changed will be provided. Okay, for now, we're using put. I hope that made sense. And so we're going to have the same URL, right? Again, that's the good thing about REST. We can use the same URLs, but the method is actually different. Okay. And so when you call this URL, but with a put method, then instead of calling the show school handler, we should call the update school handler. All right, great, and that's it. Let's close this and let's start our terminal. Okay, so go run. Okay, server starts. That's good. Let's open a new terminal and let's do a test. We know we have one record, so let's just say curl. See the header, localhost 4000, version 1, and we have schools, and we want with ID 1. Okay, so we have that. No problem. So let's update this. So for me to update this, I will have to grab my test data, and I will change name to apple tree. Alright, so that's the name of our school, apple tree. Okay, so let's close that. Let's save that. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna make this be the body. So paste, good. So we have a new body. And so now I will simply say curl, all right? And I'm gonna say that I want to use for the method put. Okay, so -x put, and the data will simply come from the body variable. Okay, so the body of the request is coming from the variable named body, and the URL is localhost Okay. And of course 4000 version 1, and then of course schools, and we want to update ID 1. Okay, and so what do you notice? Well, previously we had XYZ, and now we have Apple 3. But more importantly, look at the version. We have version 1, and now we have version 2. Alright, so we are confident that the changes were made and we have a new version. So every time we make a change, we increment the version count. Okay, so that's it for our updating functionality. So all that's left is to, let me actually add this. So let me commit this. So we added the update complete replacement. Right, functionality. Okay, so git push. Okay. Why do I keep using master? Man. Alright, so we are finished. Let's leave it here, and I will see you in the next lesson where we will complete our CRUD by implementing the delete functionality. I will see you in that lesson.